Welcome, welcome. So I wanted to offer this space today. I was getting multiple requests for help, for ideas, answers, insights, and I think that there's many different things on people's minds. So I wanted to offer this space for whatever there is, not with no particular agenda for today, just the questions that I've gotten already. And you can feel free to send more questions in the chat box. I'll be monitoring it. Um, as we're getting started, I do want to, even as people are trickling in, it's okay. I wanted to start with a little bit of a mindfulness practice because I think it's just something useful to have access to. This I am recording this, and I do hope to post it to our YouTube channel so people can watch it after tonight. Okay, so to start with a mindfulness practice, mindfulness, in case you haven't heard of this before, it's a general health and wellness practice, and it's not a particular like therapy thing. It's a good thing for every person to have access to. Mindfulness means, this is a brief version. Mindfulness means present moment awareness non judgmentally. Usually, what gets us stressed is actually anticipations or thoughts about the future, not actually what's happening right now. What usually gets us sad is rehearsing or reviewing the past. Again, not what's happening right now. What tends to get us angry or shaming ourselves or feeling bad in other ways is usually putting judgments on the present moment. So just experiencing this moment itself tends to be very relieving, relaxing, stress relieving. So I'm hopeful that this will be a nice practice for you to hold on to in the coming days. Hopefully, just days. Okay, so for this practice is a very simple, straightforward mindfulness practice. You can really practice mindfulness any way you want. For the record, you can use this with children by doing literally anything. You can say, "We're going to practice mindfulness of a song, and we're going to sing a song, and everybody is going to just be singing." And that would be a wonderful way of practicing with your kids. So, for our practice today, we're going to do a mindfulness of breath practice. What's great about that is that your breath is something that is always with you. It never leaves you. So it's always something that you can use for a mindfulness practice. So for this practice, you can start by getting into a mindful posture. A mindful posture is an awake and aware position. You can have a mindful posture standing, sitting, lying down. I'm gonna describe what that would look like for sitting down, but this can work in any posture, in any position. So you want to have your feet flat on the floor. You can put your palms up or open. Even if you feel awkward doing that, you can just kind of put them anywhere where they're not closed off or folded up. That tends to just keep us more closed. Um, and you can lower your eyes or close them, just put them in a place that's not distracting for you. And for this practice, I want you to just bring attention and awareness to your breath, just noticing that you are breathing. Notice if any thoughts show up about breathing and let those go and just come back to just breathing. Notice the pace of your breath, but don't try to change it, make it any slower or deeper. Don't try to breathe in any particular way. Just note how your breath is right now. Note whether you're breathing in through your nose or your mouth. Notice whether your breath is fast or slow, cold or warm. Notice the urge to change how you're breathing without necessarily acting on that urge. And just being present with each breath as a brand new breath that you've never experienced before and that you'll never experience again. When you're ready, you can put one hand on your heart or on your chest and one on your stomach, your abdomen, just noticing the subtle movements that come along with your breath. Again, noticing if there's an urge to breathe in a particular way or to change how you're breathing, and letting go of that urge and just coming back to observing how you're breathing right now. Noticing if gratitude shows up for your breath being with you, a constant anchor that you can always tap into. And with two more mindful breaths, you can move around your fingers, move around your toes, and bring attention and awareness back to the space that we're in. Okay. So usually I would ask for reactions to the practice. If you are sharing this with a loved one or with a child, I would encourage reactions to the practice. Sometimes really interesting things come up, and it's really a helpful part of practicing to discuss reactions. So several questions were sent in, and I want to address those. I also, if anybody has any other questions that they want to add for us into the chat box, feel free to add there as well. So I'm going to go through and address one by one. So one thing that was sent in is, how do you deal with adversity? So kind of a broad question. I would say the first things that come to mind, I think that a lot of what goes around, or what I've been seeing going around in terms of ideas of how to cope, are a lot of what I would typically teach as crisis skills. And crisis skills are really valuable to have right now because there is a crisis. And so you're probably going to need crisis skills at some point, either for yourself or for a loved one or a child. It's very reasonable to expect that you might want to have crisis skills on hand. Crisis skills are skills that you use when you're in a crisis. It's short term. So this is not like a long-term plan of action. You're not managing well right now. You're not able to use other skills, and okay, so crisis management strategies are really important for an actual emotional crisis or an actual crisis. And those are brief, short-term things you can use right now that will help you calm down right now. The problem with them is that they are short-lived. They are not long-term strategies. They are not going to overall decrease your overall anxiety. They're going to help keep you at bay for, at best, probably half an hour, I would guess. So this is not really a long-term solution. They are important and valuable to have on hand. Some great crisis strategies are dunking your face, or face in a bucket of cold water would be fantastic. If you can get access to that, it works really well. If you can't, the most important things are cold water under your eyes while holding your breath for about 30 seconds or so, but don't stress yourself out over that. When we do that, cold water under our eyes, head tilted down, holding our breath, we activate a reflex that is the opposite of the fight or flight response. So that's a resting response. So that will encourage physiological rest in your body. People think cold would be so bad, and it's actually not. Cold water can really bring on this resting response. So that can be a fantastic option for an immediate decrease in crisis, an emotional crisis. Physical movement, or a really intense, vigorous physical movement, can also kind of immediately raise the heart rate and then lead to a nice decrease after it. It's a great thing to do, by the way, if you're in a miklat, or like, especially if you're with kids, getting some vigorous movement in can be really fun. You can put on some music, you can dance with them, you can have a competition of who can do the most jumping jacks or things like that. Can really encourage intense, vigorous movement that can actually really be physiologically relaxing. Another idea is tensing and releasing muscles is also very relaxing. And these are all things that are physiologically relaxing. So that's, fantastic and great to have. They are not solving anything. They are not changing anything. They are a short-term crisis response. So that's important to be aware of, because we want to have access to those, but we also want to understand when to use them. The other things that are more important, in my opinion, are kind of sustainably decreasing our vulnerability. We're all in a more heightened, emotionally vulnerable state right now, right? Everybody is going to be in a more vulnerable state emotionally, which is not great, because we're going to have to deal with additional stressors. For example, kids at home, or for example, sirens, or for example, speaking with family members, or not knowing situations, or whatever is to come. We want to be more resilient, or a little bit emotionally stronger right now, not particularly weaker. And the reality is that we're probably emotionally more frail. So the way to emotionally strengthen ourselves is by ensuring that we take what I call our emotional vitamins. And emotional vitamins can be a variety of different things. Ideally, you want to be incorporating things like pleasant activities on a daily basis. That is totally you dependent. It has to be pleasant for you. But getting in view of sunrise, or reading a book that you really enjoy, or something that's really funny, or planning for a really pleasant, fun, if you're making a bar mitzvah in 6 months and you really wouldn't be thinking about it otherwise, but mentally planning for it or picking out, things for it might be something that you can engage in right now that's fun and pleasurable. Going on a walk, things that can be just pleasurable, just pleasant right now. Like if you can like get a massage, something that's like pleasant, that would be great. The next thing would be things that give you a sense of accomplishment. Every day you can make for yourself a little to-do list, or something that would make you feel like we're getting something done, something's happening, even if it's just a 20-minute block, even if it's just a short thing, even if it's something that's like not a huge deal, but it's something that gives you a sense of accomplishment, right? I thought I was going to get all the Sukkot laundry done today. I got one load done today, but I was really grateful that I got one load done rather than no loads done. So that can be something that can give us a little bit of a sense of accomplishment. Connecting socially with people, whether that's by phone, by email, by in person, are all wonderful ways of connecting. Any way that you can connect socially with somebody would be wonderful. Any way that you can be connected, or connect with a group of people. If there's a group of women getting together and you can connect in that way, wonderful. Any way that you can get connected would be, again, just a way of decreasing your vulnerability, taking your emotion vitamins. And then the fourth thing is to do things that align with your values. Things that align with your personal values is going to be, again, dependent on you. But if you really value, I always give the example of like nurturing other people, right? And usually you do that through your work, but right now you're not at work, you're home with your family, and you're not getting that same sense of whatever. Try and find another way that you can be nurturing. Is there things that you can do for your family that would give you that same sense of nurturing? And that's definitely possible, obviously, but finds a way to make that happen. Doing things that are aligned with your values makes you feel purposeful. It tends to decrease our anxiety and discomfort with the uncertainty or the unknowns. So that can be really valuable. So that's all about decreasing our vulnerabilities. And I talked also about dealing with crises, which I think is important, especially when I see the kind of material that circulates right now. It seems like that's kind of a big focus is ideas for decreasing emotional crisis, but we're not always in emotional crisis. We might just be in this like high alert stage. And so it's not going to hold it as a long-term thing. The next question, all the chat questions I'm going to answer at the end. I'm going to first just answer the questions that were sent in before. Okay, so how to talk with children about being in danger, but also trusting in Hashem. Okay, that's a really tricky question with multiple layers to it. So let's try to address it. First of all, there's so many pieces to this, so I'm sure I'm going to miss something. But the first thing that comes to mind is do not make false promises. I don't care how old the child is. If you make false promises, you are setting the child up to not trust you and to feel less safe and secure in the world and to have issues with anxiety. So we don't want to say anything that's not true. So you can't, and definitely don't say things like, Hashem loves us, so therefore nothing bad is going to happen. Even if in your head you understand that means that whatever happens is good, that's a very complex, like philosophical concept for a small child to understand. So that essentially to them, they're probably going to hear something more like, if something bad happens to me, then that means I'm a bad person, which we don't want them to get that message, because bad things do happen to good people. That's part of our existence. And yes, we have to contend with that, but they're probably not philosophically up to that. So say things that you can for sure back up as true. You can say things like, Hashem loves us. We can ask Hashem for anything we want. Hashem sometimes says no, but a lot of times he says yes when we ask. It's our job to ask. Whenever we ask, Hashem listens, even if he doesn't always say yes. You can explain that Hashem loves us no matter what, and that Hashem's in charge of what happens. Those are all things that you can kind of safely say to kids about the relationship between safety and danger and Hashem, which is a complex subject. we can also, in terms of just the topic in general of talking with children about being in danger, I find it really important to explain to children that it's not their responsibility to maintain their safety. It's parents' responsibility or the parent's job to be in charge of the child's safety. The child's job is to listen to the parent or to follow the parent. Okay, so children need to do their best to follow their parents, to listen to their parents, and parents need to do their best to ensure their children's safety. That doesn't mean that parents will always be able to guarantee their children's safety. It just means that it's the parent's job. So what the parents can do is communicate to the children that you don't have to worry. Ima, Abba, Mami, Tati are going to do our best to make sure you are safe. We will tell you what you need to do to stay safe. This way, they don't feel a responsibility to do anything other than listen to you, which all you want them to be doing. You can explain to them things like they can always look for a trusted adult or a favorite adult to follow or to listen to, and people will always try to help them. Things like that you can say, and that their responsibility is to listen and to follow. You can also really, so important to explain as much detail as you can about what they're experiencing. What is a siren? What does it mean? Why do we not have school? Answer questions with as many facts as you can give as possible. No matter the age of the child, it will always be helpful to give more facts that you can stand on that are clear as anything. Okay. You can explain, like, this is what a rocket looks like. When a rocket comes, it comes up in the air, ooh, and then it comes down. When it comes down, it might break. If it breaks, we want to make sure that we're safe when we go inside of our safe room, or however you explain a mamad. Then if it breaks, it's not going to hurt us. Okay. If we're outside of the room, there are other things we can do to try and keep safe. This is how we can do that. We can put our hands over our head. We can stand near a favorite adult or a trusted adult, and explaining concepts like that and really running through it. Do not spend a lot of time on this, because that's kind of just feeding the fear or feeding the anxiety. You want this to be like a brief thing, that we can tap into, a brief thing that we want to go through and explain, that they can always come to us about. They can always ask further questions on, but we're not harping on it. We're not spending the whole day on it. We're spending a portion of our time on. And so we're trying to be as transparent as we can. We're trying to keep in the facts as best we can. And we're also spending a lot of time on other things. So try and keep routine as much as you can. Try and explain, we're not going to school today, but we are going to daven together today, or we are going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together today. We're still going to have our 10 o'clock sandwich today. Things that you can, what is happening today. Sometimes for small children, making like a pictorial, like a calendar with pictures, can be really helpful, like showing them step by step what's going to happen in the day. This is really helpful for parents also, in terms of having some kind of structure to the day, can be really helpful. But also, if it's in pictures, and the kid can kind of see what's happening next, so it doesn't feel so hefker, or like, when is what happening? I don't know what's going on, which contributes to increased anxiety. Also, just back to the original question, which is, how can I explain to my children about being in danger, but also trusting in Hashem? You can include Hashem in every conversation you have. Like, we can always talk to Hashem. Hashem is always listening to us. We can ask Hashem for anything. You can always go back to that. You can always ground in that. But you also want to make sure to give your kids other information that's accessible and understandable for them. Okay, the next question I got is dealing with our own fears around our kids. So the problem is that we probably have our own emotions, and we're trying to be there for our families at the same time, and that is tricky. And so what we can do is, first of all, take your emotional temperature all the time. You might maybe set an alarm on your phone once an hour to check in, or 3 times a day to check in, but just keep your finger on your own pulse, because if you notice your emotions escalating, that will be a great time to just duck out, go to the bathroom, go to your bedroom for 2, 5 minutes if possible, set the kids up with an activity or whoever needs to kind of be set up or whatever needs to happen, take a break and refill yourself. Refilling yourself, I think people confuse with, like I was talking about earlier, those crisis skills. So taking deep breaths is probably not going to refill you. Splashing cold water in your face is probably not going to refill you. Something that might refill you might be connecting socially with someone, writing down your fears, talking with somebody you trust, reading divrei chizuk or something that inspires you or that's valuable to you. You can write a letter to yourself, and reminding yourself of your values and of what you think, of like ways of making sense or making meaning out of pain. If you can write yourself that, then you can tap into that. So those are all ways of kind of taking care of yourself that would really fill you up a little bit more. But you want to be sure to be doing that regularly. And like I talked about earlier, that decreasing vulnerability aspect is so, so crucial. Okay. So now I'm going to chat questions. So the first one I see is, how do I get past constantly thinking about the people that are going through the hard time? 1 second. Okay. How do I get past my constant thinking about the people that are going through the hard time? So there's definitely a time and place to think about that. What you want to be doing, though, is making specific times and keeping it limited rather than letting it be all the time. Something that can be helpful is setting up a worry time. You can set up 2 worry times if that's helpful right now. You can keep it to 15 minutes, 30 minutes max. I wouldn't do more than that. And that can be the time where you look up all the news, think about it, allow your attention to be there. But then the rest of the day, just like our mindfulness video. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the same, whatever my internet issue is the same issue I'm having on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram and you can hear me, but you can't see me, I'll hopefully be uploading the video after this. And thank you for bearing with me on whatever my current internet issues are that I'm not aware of. Okay. So setting aside a worry time allows you for the rest of the day to use it like a mindfulness practice, noticing that your mind went to that place and say, oh, it's not my worry time now, and just kind of allow it to be pushed there. No, we're not going there now. We're going to go there later. So you're allowing there to be space for it. You're not saying I'm never thinking about it, not thinking about it at all. You're allowing space for it, but it's not consuming you. Because we're allowed to worry. In fact, worrying would be extremely appropriate right now, right? And it doesn't need to be all the time. I hope that was helpful in answering that. The next question I see is, when my 11-year-old daughter says I can't fall asleep because I can't stop imagining a mechabel coming in and hurting me or kidnapping me, she's right, that could happen. Hashem only lets things happen, even scary things that does not calm her down at that age. I think that for sure that age, but I think that can also be for anyone. I think that for anyone, we can have that's. I think this actually connects very much to the question right before that of our minds can be consumed by these things. One thing I always like to tell people in general with trauma, and this is like just generally speaking, let's say somebody gets assaulted, I mean they were like physically attacked in a dark place late at night by a group of not such nice people. Okay. That's terrible, very painful, very upsetting. And they might walk through the rest of their lives very afraid of being attacked by groups of people in dark settings. But would that make much sense? Because they're just as much in danger of being attacked by a mechabel and kidnapped, or being shot at, or lightning coming down and killing them, or being killed in a car accident. I always give the example of like, you're much more likely to die of a car accident than anything else in the world, honestly. Just statistically speaking, if that's like any comfort to anybody. I'm kidding. But we pinpoint our fears around the things that are consuming our attention, but that's not because they're actually more dangerous or that worrying about them is actually making us any more safe. We're just at risk of the things that could potentially harm us for worrying about them or not worrying about them. Or if they're more statistically likely to happen or less statistically likely to happen, you can be the 0.01% or not. And so that the worrying is not particularly helpful. What we want to instead remind ourselves is it's probably not going to happen. Bad things happen, but they probably won't happen. They usually don't happen. And two, whatever happens, I am going to handle it as best as I can. Even if the terrible thing that I'm very afraid of happens, I will just handle it as best as I can. So worrying about it is not making me better at handling it. What might make me better at handling it might be sharing my fears with my parents, getting a good night's rest, doing things that help me relax before sleep, like doing mindful breathing or putting cold water on my face or getting some intense movement in. Any of those things might be a nice way of trying to physiologically relax my body before bed. But definitely getting rest is going to be more helpful than panicking and worrying about a bad outcome. So we don't have to tell our children that bad things will never happen. Although we might want to tell them that, that's probably not going to work very well. And it's also not going to increase their trust in you, which is overall going to lead to further anxiety. Healthier relationship with anxiety usually comes from greater safety and stability from our environment. And that is usually built from a basis of trust, that I can trust my adults to tell me, the adults in my life, to tell me what I need to know, to take care of me, to give me the accurate information. I don't have to figure it out myself. So no, you are not going to tell her that Hashem's going to make it, that never happens, or that's never going to happen to you. You don't have to, um, you don't have to convince her that that she can, magically make bad things not happen. You don't have to convince any of that. All you need to do is ground in that bad things sometimes happen, but they usually don't. All kinds of bad things happen, right? Just as likely that something a different bad thing is going to happen as this bad thing is going to happen. It makes sense that you're worrying about it, but you don't need to worry about it. It's not making you safer. And the more you worry about it, it doesn't make you any safer than you were before. And even if a bad thing were to happen, you probably will, you will, no, you will for a fact, handle it the best you possibly can. And the way to make yourself handle it the best is by doing things like getting a good night's sleep, talking with your loved ones, asking questions when you have them, allowing your feelings to show up and talking about them and sharing them and allowing them to be, and all that stuff is great stuff. Okay, so those are the questions that I've seen come in. Does anybody have any final questions they want to send in at this point? I'll give it another minute. I'll stay another minute. Otherwise, I'll start to wrap up by saying that this is massive what's going on. Be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with your family members. If you have a child who is seriously misbehaving right now, understand that makes so much sense. And what would make more sense than that, of course, and kind of reflecting that to them, that hey, I see you're having a hard time, and of course you're having a hard time. Duh, and allowing them that space, not saying that it's okay to misbehave, just that it's understandable. Be gentle with yourself, right? Your emotions yourself are going through ups and downs, and allow for that, allow space for that. Don't judge yourself for that. Create spaces. Like I said, allow yourself to go to the bathroom 5 minutes, find a way to deal with that. And just allow for that to be. Buffer yourself with those emotion vitamins, like I talked about. Understand, create worry time space for yourself. Understand that bad things can happen and they probably won't. And even if they do happen, you're going to handle as best as you can. And there's nothing more that you can do about that. Some more questions that came in. So the child who's having trouble going to sleep, they just feel that no matter what, they can't calm down. So listen, you can't control it for them. You can't make them calm down. You can't make them be okay. So that's tough, but this is what it is, right? You can't control that for them. And you can acknowledge that also, by the way, I cannot make you be calm. I wish I could. I want to be there for you. I am here for you, whatever I can do to help you, but I cannot make you be calm. And I can give you 5 ideas. Here are the ideas. You're welcome to try any of them. Good night, and then kind of give her space. Is hyperness in children a symptom of the anxiety coming out? I don't know. It could, first of all, it also can be, by the way, there's multiple different factors here. There's also the fact that we've been on holiday for a while. So we don't have the regular structure that kids are used to. And so it's not just the anxiety or the fear or the unknown or the uncertainty. It's also just the lack of structure, and the lack of routine is really hard for kids. It's really hard for adults, but it's definitely hard for kids, and it contributes to an overall dis-ease, or just like not knowing. Like, as much as you can kind of deal with going into your day with like, whatever, I'm going to do the best I can do today, kids, really, it's hard for adults also, but it's really hard for kids. um so it could be a symptom of either one of those. I don't think it really matters. I think what you can do is just try and create a semblance of a schedule as best you can, and also just validate the child's needs. Like, I don't know, at some point today I saw my kids were really losing it, and I said, okay, we're doing races, and I just came up with lots of different races. Do 10, my kids do cartwheels, so to go do 10 cartwheels, go walk backwards in a circle 10 times, whatever it was. And each time they finished it, they came and they gave me a high five. They felt great. We had the music on. It was wonderful. So some way of kind of just using the energy that's going on and going with it, and just being okay with that, I think, is really valuable. Um, um, yeah, in terms of the with the child not falling asleep, you ultimately can't make her fall asleep. I just want to validate that you cannot make her fall asleep, and you cannot make her be calm. All you can do is continue providing space, reminding her she can always come to you, giving her ideas and strategies, reminding her that worrying isn't making anything better. It's not making her more safe, that it's totally validating. It's totally understandable for her to feel scared, or whatever it is. Okay, I see another question. I have a 3-year-old that sees and probably senses things are going on, but is not being verbal about what they're feeling. At this age, what is appropriate to say to her? So it really depends. Every kid is different. And I can't say, for this age, particularly do this. You have to, I think, especially that age, it's tricky because some kids are more or less verbal. So it really depends on the kid. But I think it is, first of all, you always want to say like what, like, uh whatever you want to ask, you can always ask me. Giving lots of hugs, explaining as much facts as possible. We don't have GAN today, so sad. We want to go to GAN, but we can't go to GAN. It's not safe. Safe is when we can go to GAN. We can't go to GAN because it's not safe. We have to listen to Iman Abba as best we can. Things like that. It kind of explaining as many facts as you can, appropriate for her. I'm assuming it's a her, for her or his, or yes, because that was a she, for her age level, for her verbal development also. And like, you can kind of sense, I think, what they're getting, what they're not getting, what their questions are, where they're at. But yeah, definitely opening the lines of communication, validating all feelings, continuing to give facts, to give information, to clarify the schedule. It's really valuable to say, this is what we are doing today. This is what we're not doing today. So we're not going to GAN today. We're not going to visit Saba today. We are going to go eat lunch and supper today together. We are going to daven together today. We are going to sing a song today. We're going to play that game you like today. So clarifying what is and what isn't happening is really helpful. Making a sort of Seder Hayom, you can make, like I said before, a pictorial calendar, where the child can visually see what's happening. A really cute one I've seen, this is more to help with morning routine usually, but I think it can be helpful here also, is to take a paper and cut little strips down this way, and then they can color on the strip what that step of the day is, and then you could put a Velcro on each one, and they can close that tab when you finish that step. You can make a little check mark on the outside if you're really bold, but that can kind of visually see what's happening for the day, and that can also help, I think, you as a parent kind of move through the day when we're having this non-schedule for such an extended period. I mean, hopefully this doesn't continue, but that we've already been off for the holidays for a while. I think it's really valuable to keep some kind of schedule. So I hope that's helpful. One more question came in. Please give some advice on using cope ahead in this crazy situation. So cope ahead is a DBT strategy. You use it in 2 main ways. Number 1 is to plan ahead how you want to handle things. And to think of how you ideally would want to handle a situation. Think about whatever it is you're worrying about. Like we talked about the child who's having a hard time going to sleep. Think about whatever the things are that you're worrying about. How would you ideally want to handle them? Even not, even just the discomfort of not knowing, or the just the not non-linearness of our coming days, hopefully ending very quickly, but the non-linearness that we're predicting for the coming days, just how do you ideally want to handle that, and plan ahead what will be the best way you want to handle it. The second part of cope ahead is to imaginally rehearse how you would handle it. So once you've decided on your ideal way of handling, using your imagination, imagine yourself going through the situation that you're afraid of and handling it well, coping in the way that you imagined. And the more that you rehearse this, the more you create new neural networks, new pathways in your brain for being able to handle in that way. So it really sets you up for success. And it's just it's my second favorite skill. So I'm a fan of that one. Um, yeah. Okay. So any other final questions? Yeah, the idea of rehearsing the terrifying situation is panic worthy in its own. I agree. It's very, very hard. I wouldn't recommend, like, yeah, think about the worst possible situation and rehearse that. I think that that can be very, very stressful. I'm talking about if you're already doing that. If you are already doing that, this would be a healthier way of handling, would be to plan how you would want to handle and then rehearse yourself handling well, which gives you some empowerment of I can handle even my worst nightmare. I can handle well, which is what I was saying before, that bad things generally don't happen. Sometimes they do, but they generally don't. And um and even if they do happen, we can handle them. We can survive even our biggest nightmares. So that I think is just helpful to really give ourselves space for, even as challenging as that is. So a lot of validation on the fact that this is scary, this is beyond words. And I can resource myself. I can resource my family. We can handle well. I want to say one more thing that just popped in my head on just on decrease. Oh, that's there was another. I think there was another question on this. Maybe it disappeared from my list. How to prevent us from our kids from being traumatized. I can't make sure I can't make a guarantee that your kids won't be traumatized, or that you won't be traumatized. I can't make a guarantee on that. What I can say though is that the most important thing during and an immediate aftermath of a traumatic event is not necessarily therapy or doing anything in particular. It's giving constant voice and narration to what's happening so we don't get stuck in our heads. Because, oh, that in terms of decreasing our risk and our children's risk of developing longer term trauma reactions to these situations, the most important thing is creating space for expression and narration. We don't want to get stuck in our heads. We don't want kids stuck in their heads. We want to be constantly processing. So if you have family in America who wants to listen to you, God bless, go for it. If you have just loved ones to speak with or neighbors and friends, talk, talk, and talk. Allow your kids to talk, and encourage them to talk, and talk. And other ways of expression are also wonderful. They can color, if you can color, if you want to act it out with toys, if you want to like draw a particular thing, if you want to do any other form of like artistic expression, write a song, drum it out. I think I've seen somebody talk about doing that. So drumming it out, or writing music, or just playing music, or just playing loud music and dancing. Any way of expressing, communicating what's internally happening, emotions and thoughts and internal sensations. There's three things that I talk about happening internally: thoughts, emotions, sensations. Any ways you can figure out of expressing that will be valuable in terms of not allowing it to get stuck inside. Okay, so we don't want it getting stuck. We don't want it getting like not processed. We want it being allowed, processed, expressed. You don't need to process it in a particular way. You just need to allow for your own space for this, to talk it through, to say what's on your mind, to say, even if you're angry or you're confused or you're scared or whatever it is, allowing space for that. So maybe maybe you're not able to do that with your immediate family, but maybe you are able to do that with an old friend, or maybe you are able to do that by yourself late at night, allow space for that. Okay. Allow space for that. Like normally, let's say, it's really important that you keep with a certain sleep schedule which by the way, it still is important for you to do in order for you to be able to be on for your family during the day to get good, healthy sleep. But at the same time, if you need that space, if you need to give yourself the opportunity to give yourself that, take it. Take what you need right now. That's completely reasonable. And you need to stay as full as you can, like we talked about earlier, in order to be there for your kids. But I just do want to differentiate two different things here. One is that I just said is room for yourself to fill yourself up, to take your emotional vitamins so you have the energy for things. The other is processing and expressing. When we express what's inside and what's internally, thoughts, emotions, sensations, when we express that through any means, talking, writing, whatever, we allow for the natural processing of it rather than getting stuck. And longer term trauma reactions have to do with stuckness. And for people who are really terrified, do you recommend not hearing the news at all or hearing so you don't leave it all to your imagination? That's a great question. I think neither. I think that it's about keeping it limited. So don't have the news going all day and don't not look at all. You want to really have limited exposure. So like I said, worry time. So let's say you have 30 minutes at night and 30 minutes in the morning. That would be a great amount of time to have exposure. During that time, allow yourself exposure, but don't do it all day long. Don't do it constantly. You could have 3 check-in points of 10 minutes each. That'll be reasonable as well. Okay, I do hope this was helpful, and wishing everybody safety, peace, strength in these times. Please reach out to us if we can be of any help. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Take care.